Gloria Masters, it's very much my honor to talk to you today. And as we go into this October 2023 election, we're 4 weeks out when this interview is taking place. As somebody who has a huge story to tell about child abuse and is now traveling the world telling your story and helping others understand, I want to begin there before we delve into your personal journey with this question. What is it that every political figure in New Zealand who cares about our children and their future and their safety, what is it that we should be looking at when we stand for politics and want to represent the interests of those children in this election? What are some of the most important things that political figures need to be aware of?
Well, I think first up, political figures need to be aware of is that this does happen and that this is a lot more prevalent than any well-meaning, good-hearted, safe adult in New Zealand can be. So the numbers are frightening. We have up to 1 in 3 children in our country being sexually abused. And these statistics come from Help New Zealand. By the time a girl is 16 in our country, 1 in 3 girls will have been sexually abused, and 1 in 6 boys will have been sexually abused. So our numbers are pretty scary. What concerns me, or what I think political figures need to be aware of, is we know that there are consequences for not strapping a child into a moving car, or for not making sure that a seatbelt is fastened, and that can lead to a criminal conviction, actually. Did you know that the chance of a child being maimed or killed in a car accident is far, it's a minuscule amount compared to the 36 children in our country who are sexually abused every day. These are new victims every day. Where is the noise? So that's what I'd like any person in politics to be aware of.
Where is the noise? That question sends chills. There's been this screaming silence for decades. Why? Why do you think the society has stayed so silent about something so grievously wrong?
Well, I think there's a few things, and I call it the silent endemic. And I actually came over to Australia in June this year and presented at the International Mental Health Conference on this silent endemic. So the reason for the silence, it's quite simple. It's multi-layered, but it's simple. One, it doesn't suit the narrative. New Zealand is considered clean, green, beautiful. Nothing bad could happen there, could it? So there's that. The second is we have what we call cognitive dissonance, and this is where we have mental discomfort at accepting something as fact that is not sitting within our value system. So for most good people, Liz, and we have to believe that most people are good people, it's abhorrent to them to even consider that an adult would want to sexually abuse a child. This is not sexual assault, by the way. That's minimizing it. When a child is being sexually abused, it is sexual abuse, not sexual assault, in my opinion.
Explain the difference. Is there a difference there?
Well, for people over 16, or the current terminology is called sexual assault. That's absolutely fine if an adult is happy to have that considered sexual assault if they have been assaulted sexually. No issue. However, we have to be careful of our languaging, Liz, because what we're finding is that this type of language minimises the impact and what actually happens to our beautiful tamariki ratatahangi in our country. So I struggle with it. We have things now like, instead of a pedophile, they're wanting them to be called minor attracted persons.
Oh, it's disgusting. disgusting.
So can you see where I'm going? So sexual assault to replace sexual abuse, not on my watch. I strongly believe we need to be really careful about our languaging.
What does the word abuse connote to you? Are you talking abuse is something that tells us immediately it's going on long term? Is there that difference?
No. Sexual abuse, it means it's a greater impact than an assault.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah. That's words are so powerful, aren't they? When you really step back. What are some of the effects that you're seeing? I mean, 36 children a day in this country going, it completely robs a child of their innocence, of their childhood from that point on. What else do you see? What else do you know happens at that point when this innocence is stolen?
Well, you see, the interesting thing with all of this, Liz, is that I've set up this charity called Handing the Shame Back in our country, because that is what happens for a child. The shame is huge, and the shame is carried by the child for the rest of their lives, actually. And that's only one impact. There are many, many impacts and unforeseen consequences of this. We know that, for instance, over 85% of our rehabs have people who have got sexual abuse, childhood sexual trauma at the base of this. We know that our prisons have over 55% of inmates have child sexual trauma abuse at their base. We know that suicides in our country, the figure's been quoted as much as up to 65%. So need I go on? The undealt with aspect of this, because it begins in silence, you see. Secrecy is then ensured, and then shame follows on. And out of the three, shame takes the gold every time.
Why do you think, Gloria, it is so severe in New Zealand? And at this point, I need to ask you, is 36 a day severe per capita by world standards? Has New Zealand got some of the worst stats in the world on this?
Yeah. Sorry, what was your first question?
Why do you think New Zealand has such a dark underbelly? And then I wanted to compare the darkness of our underbelly on sexual abuse of children with world standards.
Well, I think there's a few different responses, Liz. And again, this is my opinion, but we don't just have high numbers in this. We also lead the world in suicide. We lead the world in infanticide. Domestic violence is something we're in the top 3 at as well. So no, it's not just child sexual abuse. There's quite an underbelly in our country. So I think we need to be mindful of that. Compared to other countries, we're not that dissimilar, but I do know that, for instance, in Australia, it is 1 in 3 as well. And I know other countries quite similar. I think what happens is people don't like talking about it for many reasons, but therefore it can't be addressed. Does that make sense? Yes. So one of the reasons they don't like talking about it is kind of that it's so uncomfortable. It's also the NIMBY, not in my backyard, until they find out years later that actually their child or nephew or whatever had been abused in their own backyard. And I think it's also that people don't know what to do with it, Liz. Because once you know that story, or you hear what happened to that man or woman, as they are now adults, what do you do with that? People struggle because it's a very shameful personal thing, and it just does not get talked about. And also it suits, of course, the abusers or the pedophiles, because no one wants to talk about it, hence the silent endemic. The silence is deafening.
It's deafening. Let's compare it with Australia, where you are at the moment. You're in Brisbane right now. Now, they did have a huge inquiry into sexual abuse, and it was shocking how deep and wide it ran also in Australia. Are you aware of where the results of that inquiry have gone, or is it yet another insincere government bit of theatre that results in some document that sits on a dusty shelf and nothing really gets done? What's happening there?
Yes, I think it's still under. I think the findings have been released. I'm not sure about the progression of any of it, but a little bit like our Lake Alice, our beautiful survivors from Lake Alice. It's been left, and so people just have to pick up and carry on with their lives. But it's a very, very complex issue, and it's a shameful one for people who are survivors, and we carry the shame until we are healed enough to not carry it.
And I really want to talk about your journey through that, because it's fascinating and will help others to let go of their shame and know that there is help. And your wonderful organization, Handing the Shame Back, is terrific. Funny that you mentioned Lake Alice. I remember hearing that a month or so ago, that there was going to be nothing done for those poor survivors, and thinking, if I ever got into politics, I would turn that around. And then about 3 weeks later, I decided to get into politics. So I'm determined to reopen that and honor those survivors, and have all New Zealanders know their incredible stories of intense courage in surviving. But now I'm going to, just before we talk about your story, ask you this. So imagine that a really good group of ethical Kiwis who do not want to be politicians, they want to represent the people, and they get in. We get in. And we find we have the money for the things that are needed to really heal this country. Two good ticks. Third tick, we say, Gloria, you're an expert in this area. We're going to give you whatever money you need for the best solutions to turn this around, to open it up, to stop the silence, to create the environment for healing. What would you do if you really did not have any budgetary limits except being a responsible adult human being? What would you do, Gloria?
Wow, I don't know if you're going to be able to stop me. I released a global hand signal for children under 16, and this is it, Liz, to keep our children safe. This is what they can use to indicate if they are feeling unsafe or being sexually abused. Why? Because children do not speak. That is an adult construct. Children show us through their behavior and through the way they use their body when things are not right. So that hand signal was released on our Global Awareness Day on June 16. That actually began in Canada in 2021 during lockdown, and a group of women who were being domestically abused started to release that across Facebook. You may remember it. So this year, when it came time for Handing the Shame Back Global Awareness Day, a friend reached out from Northern Canada and said, Gloria, don't make a new one, just use this, repurpose this. And so that's what we do. We've tested it on 2 and 3-year-olds. They nailed it, Liz. So I would like that hand signal, please, to be on every billboard in New Zealand. I would like that to be across our harbour bridge. I would like organisations like mine, Handing the Shame Back, to be fully funded so that we can have all and any survivors step forward, receive free support. And this goes so deep that I think if we had education and resource and could provide support groups for our beautiful survivor community, because if you do the maths, we have over 1.5 million of us walking around who have experienced some form of child sexual abuse. So Liz, wow, this is bigger than Ben-Hur.
One of my visions, Gloria, is that we have beautiful small cottage hospitals maybe we get houses right through the country, and they have all sorts of modalities for healing. From, you can have the big pharmaceutical stuff if you want it, but there'll be acupuncture and osteopathy and herbs and counseling and massage and all of these other wonderful ways in which the body and mind can be helped to heal. So perhaps there could be some part of that that also weaves in there. Any other ideas that you would do is a minister for child abuse, somebody really in the top echelons who answers to that?
Definitely. I think lumping it in with mental health is I think we're past that now. I think it does need to be its own, whether it's a deputy minister who just holds that as a complete portfolio, because we have up to 33% of our population who are experiencing this trauma, and some adults will never speak of it till the day they die, and then others, it's taken me decades to finally heal enough to hold my head up high and look anyone in the eye and speak. For most survivors, that won't happen, Liz. That will not happen because they don't feel safe.
Do we need to ban this extreme pornography somehow that is still allowed on the internet? While, for example, Gloria, we are being silenced, our voice as a party, NZ Loyal, is being censored to high heaven, and yet I look and think there's extreme pornography that is not being censored, that is doing such damage to human minds. It's extraordinary.
I look, I don't want to tell adults how to live their lives. Live your life. But I think we need to be mindful that children are, advertisements are coming through on devices. Where I'm just about to release a book, actually my third book next month, which is called Keeping Kids Safe. And it's a roadmap for parents, teachers, and others. And it's about all of this, the sextortion that's coming, that our children are experiencing online. The suicides that are occurring because of that. At any one time, Liz, only 15% of parents are aware of what their children are doing online. And I'm not judging parents, but I'm saying this is how surreptitious and kind of insidious this is. And these pedophiles know what they're doing. There are a lot of adults now looking at the government askance and going, you are allowing major pedophilic material into the schools, into the libraries, in books. You're allowing grave confusion, gender ideology that is being pushed far too early and far too hard. A lot of people are looking at this government askance and going, you are going out to corrupt our children's minds. That's a huge subject in itself. But it's a big topic, even coming up to this election. Tell me your own story, Gloria. Tell us all where this began for you, where the horror first hit you. I was born in 1960 on a good, quarter acre section in a Catholic family. I was the youngest daughter, and I was groomed by my father, his extended family, and my grandmother. His mother trained me in the art of child sex slavery and work. So by the time the abuse began from the time I was born, but from the time I was 6, I was being trafficked to many, many people, gangs, people in our political system, people within Freemasons, and I do need to put a qualifier there. Most Freemasons are not pedophiles. There is a select group at a certain level who are. So I'm not saying every Freemason is. There's a lot of good men in there. But that was my experience. I was trafficked until I was 16 years of age, and then I managed to escape. The point being, my father made so much money out of me, he imported one of the first 4 Pontiacs into New Zealand in 1968. I feature in over 100 child sexual abuse material videos, many, many hundred more images, as in photos, and the police tell me they are more than likely, the majority are now in the States. I had forced abortions on me at my grandmother's hands because, of course, once I became pubescent, I became pregnant over and over. I was leased out of a nightclub in K Road, top floor of that story. I wasn't allowed to be visible on the main floor, but I was chained up there. So when people look at this child sex trafficking and child sexual abuse and think it's only in the last 5 or 10 years, I'm here to say this began when time began. This is not new, but I'm so grateful to have made it through, Liz. I'm so grateful to be alive, and I've dedicated the rest of my life to helping other beautiful survivors out there, the men and women among us who have also suffered.
It's quite extraordinary, the visceral reactions in my body listening to you as a mother. You know, there are tears there, of course. How could this ever happen? But what happened deep within my body is you spoke with such calm and recounted such extraordinary horrors happening in New Zealand while lives are going on as if we have a good life here. My heart started really racing, Gloria. Does it still make your heart race to think of that little Gloria, that little girl going through that? Or are you able to look with the objectivity that you portray in your voice? It's so steady and calm, almost as if it's another character.
Well, no, of course, my heart's racing alongside yours, of course. This happened to me. It's part of who I am. I guess I'm just grateful I've made it through, and it's taken many decades to do that, to achieve that. And I feel honoured actually to be able to tell my story with love and compassion, because I want to help other survivors and show them there's a way through. They don't have to end their lives. They don't have to go down the drug and alcohol route. There is a way, and I'm not judging whether they have ever done that or not, because we do what we do to survive. But of course it has an impact. It's happened to me, but I guess I'm here for a reason, and that's it. Yeah.
You have a very great reason to live, and you've transcended something so enormous. We'll speak of that after this question, in which I want you to speak down the camera to those men who were willing to enter a room with a small child chained up, or a young teenager chained up. What would you say to that man, or even that woman, or any of those adults who were willing to do that to a child and are still willing? What would you say to them?
That their time is coming, because even if they don't get discovered today, they have to live with themselves, and the person that you face in the mirror every day is going to be your biggest critic. So it's coming for you. What is for you will find you. And secondly, I'm glad you raised females. We know that in the States and the UK, between 28 and 35% of pedophiles are women. So we've got to break that myth as well. Some of my abusers were women. So yes, I think men, the greater majority are male, but equally we've got our beautiful young boys being sexually abused and unable to share. We know that in our 14-year-old age group, over 90% of suicides for 14-year-old males are because they've been sexually abused. We know that. So
Gloria, 90%.
90%. This is prolific. There were five boys at age 14 who killed themselves a few years ago. Forgive me, Liz, I can't give the exact year, but 4 of the 5 had been sexually abused. So we know the numbers are scary. And look, I don't know if you could give me enough money to compensate what I've had to endure in my life. I don't think that's possible, but I do know we could do a lot with that money. we could be doing a lot.
You, listening to other interviews you've done, you are quite breathtaking in your courage
Yes.
and your calm.
Yes.
Could you, for all of those people listening and the ones who are still silent and holding this pain within, could you begin to tell the story of how you got out of this, how you managed to extricate yourself?
Well, not well, to be honest, not well. It's taken a lot of work and a lot of years, but I guess to those beautiful survivors watching or who will be, you know, got such a big heart for you, and I stand beside you and I believe you always. There's never anything to be gained in someone making this stuff up. What's the point? It takes the courage of a lion to find a voice, and we keep expecting our beautiful children to raise their voices, and they just can't. You've got an adult who will always have the power. And we know in some parts of Australia where there is an adult and a child in front of a child, in front of another adult, telling them about sexual abuse, and the child says it happens and the adult says it doesn't. To this day, 2023, 66% of adults will believe the adult to this day.
That's shocking. So begin by believing our children. Did you find someone in that childhood of aloneness that would listen to you, that would look after you?
I couldn't trust anyone because police were involved as well. And don't get me wrong, I love the police. They're great people. But as
I think they're very mixed, what they've done over the last few years. Very mixed. Freedom Village. I was attacked. I've seen some horrendous things from the police.
I mean, I guess in every group there's going to be great, there's going to be mediocre, and there's going to be not great. And I'm just saying, I can't lump everyone in together because I can't think like that. But what I do know is this: I couldn't trust the police as a child because they were protecting some of the people who were abusing me. Wow. So I couldn't do that. But I guess, look, it goes on today, and I think we just need to offer our survivor community a way forward so they can lift their heads and feel supported and believed and, valued.
So at what age, Gloria, could you tell that story when you did lift your head and say enough, or some part of you said, it was a messier exit for you, wasn't it, than that? It was a painful, messy exit. Could you talk about that?
Well, when I could finally lift my head.
Yes, and say, I'm not going to let this happen to me anymore, and how you came to be on this extraordinary journey where you're turning something so dark into basically the light.
Yes, I am.
Yes, could you tell people how you made that transition?
Yes.
What happened in your life?
Yes, so at the age of 16, I was able to choose whether I saw my father again or not. So I chose not to, and I never did. I never willingly saw him again. Now, the next 20 years were really a train wreck, as you would appreciate, because although that will remain one of the best days of my life, the day I turned 16, and that is why the Global Awareness Day is June 16. Isn't that beautiful?
It's gorgeous.
It means something to me anyway. And I think what happened was I was a train wreck, and I had developed a very false self. So this, if you can imagine going to a masked ball and putting that in front of your eyes, so people know there's someone behind that, but it's not quite who the person is. So that was me. And I was trained and conditioned, you see, to be everything to everybody. And what I felt or what I needed was never a priority. So I learned to have this, and people always thought I was this happy, amenable, caring caretaker of everybody. But actually, no, I was surviving. I did what I had to survive. So to unpack all of that over the years became a very big challenge for me. And it took a lot of healing and a lot of self-discovery, and I had an eating disorder, and I was drinking too much, and I was attracting the wrong people to me, all totally what I would expect, or we would expect to see in someone with that level of trauma. And I remember when I was pregnant with my first child, the doctor saying to me, doing an examination, and then saying, "Oh, you've had a few miscarriages, I see." And because I'd blocked it all, because our minds protect us by, we dissociate. Dissociation, for those that aren't sure, is your mind leaving when your body can't. So the mind takes you somewhere away to keep you safe. So, of course, I obviously had a lot of scarring, and I didn't know what the doctor was talking about. So over time, the images began and became more severe. And I realized I was fighting for my life, really, because can you imagine trying to make sense of those memories? I was leased to gangs for initiation ceremonies, for heaven's sake. I was made to perform in those videos and just have so many atrocities occur. By the way, every child sexual abuse material, whether it's movie or whether it's still images, are considered a crime scene. They are a crime scene. And I think it's important we stop calling it child porn. The languaging is so powerful. It's child sexual abuse material. Yeah? We've got to start doing that. And so anyway, as we fast track, I always knew there would be a book in me, Liz. And then as I healed more and more, not quickly, not well all the time, but as I got further down the path, that was about 4 years ago, and I realized it's time to write that book. And so I did, and it took many attempts. And then finally in 2021, that got published on Angel's Wings, My Flight from Trauma to Grace. And a beautiful title.
Beautiful title.
Yeah, my Flight from Trauma to Grace on Angel's Wings. And that has now become a bestseller. And it's horror. I'm gobsmacked. I wrote it partly as a cathartic exercise and partly because I wanted the truth to be out there. And then I started getting interviewed about that. And then I wrote my second book, which is Flight Path to Healing, a guide for child sexual abuse, CSA survivors, adult survivors of child sexual abuse. So that's a guide, and it's a working guide. So they can write in the book. There's mantras, there's exercises to do. And it's just from one survivor to another, really, about what worked for me and what may help you along your path if you're a survivor. So that's, yeah.
I mean, you are an extraordinary soul. There is a school of thought that says our soul, before we come into this earthly body, could potentially see the timeline of this life we are choosing, could see I choose that father to do those terrible things, that grandmother, those people, these people who in their lives will have to pay back the wrongdoing at some point. I do deeply believe that's how it works. But for you, there was this strength of soul to say, I'll go through all of that, have all of that experience and pain, to then in this second half of your life, to become this force of nothing but healing and love.
Yes.
I mean, that is quite an extraordinary story of human heroism, Gloria.
Thank you.
Is it exhausting? Do you get endless people reaching out to you saying, help me, heal me, save me? Do you get that every day?
I get that from all over the world, and that's partly why I'm away now, is I'm having a break. because there's only one of me. My charity is not funded. I don't get paid for this work. I do it out of the goodness of my heart, and I hope by selling a few books helps me survive. But it's big in me, this purpose, you see. It's the purpose is to shine light on this darkness through love and humility.
Gloria, when I first heard you, I think it was on Reality Check Radio, and I just felt this this woman and I will at some point connect, and somehow I will find a way to serve her purpose as well, and thereby help all of these people that you so help. We don't know what that looks like yet, but I can tell you, when New Zealand Loyal gets into governance as a true group of representatives, one of the priorities will be my contacting you and finding out how to fund handing the shame back. Tell us a bit more about what you do, what this charity does.
Oh, Liz, you're going to love it. You're going to love it. So this came to me because I thought, what is it that survivors actually struggle with? And the big one for me is always the shame. It's always the shame. It's what keeps our heads down. It keeps us diminished, minimized, less than, never enough, failures, terrible. We don't like ourselves because of the shame. And so I came up with
could I just stop you there? I remember funding the sister of somebody I knew 20 years ago, who found out the same journey, that she had suppressed a lot of memories of being horrifically sexually abused in a little country school down in Southland by a teacher who's now very high up apparently in a church in Christchurch. Yes. I have lost touch with her, and she did not want to go after him. But I'll never forget, as she worked with this counselor that I'd put her with, she came home one night and was trying to express to the person I knew, who was her brother, what she had gone through, and her jaw had been so locked up in terror by this adult male who told her never to tell, that as she tried to get the words out, she was literally grinding her teeth. It was going, it was something I have never seen before or after, but it was literally as if he had clamped something on her jaw. And all these years later, 30 years later, she was trying desperately to undo this psychological damage. It wasn't a real clamp, but it may as well have been. Have you ever seen anything like that?
I haven't seen it. I've heard it, and I see it in survivors, not that physiological, but every area of a survivor's life is impacted by this. There's such big issues that emerge. I had a panel discussion, so this might help. So what does handing the shame back do? I set this up. I run a YouTube channel where I interview a survivor a week across the world. So we have Louise Nicholas as one of our survivor community. I've interviewed her. I've interviewed Miss World New Zealand, who's also a survivor. I've got a lot of names across the world. I've got Olympic athletes who I've interviewed. So everywhere, our channel is steadily growing. And what we do is it's just a trauma-informed interview, and those beautiful survivors get to hear someone whose story may be similar, or what helped them. It may just speak to one of our survivor communities. So people seem to get a lot from it. And, I've interviewed some of the people from Dilworth. I've interviewed Lake Alice. I'm trying to reach as many as we can so that people feel less alone and more supported. Because I think
what's that YouTube channel called? Is it the same one?
All of my social media, yeah, everything's called Handing the Shame Back.
Handing the Shame Back. I'll have a look at that. What an extraordinary thing! And then suddenly there's a sense of somehow I'm not so alone. I'm part of a wider family grouping, real family, caring family.
Yeah, and so these amazing men and women can find the words, and we can talk about things like the fear we have where we go to medical appointments, if it's a dentist, or for men having the prostate test, for women having a smear test. It's all very triggering stuff, and there's just one example. Or we can talk about intimate relationships, or a survivor I interview may want to talk about, oh, I thought I must be gay. No, they weren't. They had just been abused by a man, but always wondered. Or another beautiful male who said, oh, I've never been able to have kids because I'm too scared. What if? And so we live with this trauma that was never, the shame never belonged to us. So that's one thing Handing the Shame Back does. The other things we do is I write, as you know, and I'm a prolific writer. So once a month I have a blog for survivors. It might be on trust, it might be on being triggered, it might be on dissociation, it might be on feeling worthless. And so I have many versions of that. People can just reach out. It's all free, and grab it off the website. And the other thing is I also interview partners of survivors, because sometimes as survivors, we don't realise that our damage will affect our intimate relationships, our children. And so by me getting opinions from partners of survivors, we hear, so that's what happened as a result of he or she behaving in that manner. And that can be quite rewarding. So lots and loads of content, loads of resource. And then every week I do a tip a week for survivors. And this week, my tip gets released every week, was on cognitive dissonance, because survivors often reach out and say, why is it when I tell my story, people just don't want to hear it? And so it might be a 2.5 minute clip, and I'll just talk about why. This is why. This is one of the reasons why. So
and that was what you referred to earlier, people wanting
the moral discomfort we feel. Yeah, we feel that it's like if you said to me, oh, look, my brother's a serial murderer, but come round for dinner, I'd love you to meet him. So yes. Immediately I won't disbelieve you, but I'm going to feel instant emotional discomfort, because my values don't align with what's coming out of your mouth. So it's not that I'm trying to judge, and I need survivors to realise it's not that people want to judge us, it's just they struggle with it. So how can we start to meet?
You really are such an important resource for all New Zealand, Gloria. Have you been acknowledged in mainstream media or by any politician thus far, given your enormously important work?
No, but what I have done, I did get on Kate Hawkesby's show. I did get on her show for 5 minutes because of the hand signal. So she was the only mainstream media person that reached back out. It's people really struggle with talking about child sexual abuse, but unfortunately my response is this: you might struggle with hearing about it, the child still has to get up and go to school in the morning.
Absolutely. You would be extraordinary training teachers as well. Yes. There are so many areas, nurses and medical staff. Your work would be something that could just grow and grow in this country and heal this terrible underbelly. Mm-hmm. What about politicians? Have you ever approached any mainstream politicians and said, you need to listen to my story, read my book, look at my blogs? Have you ever tried that, Gloria?
No, I did reach out to Chris Luxon, but just got a generic response, so nothing. I did try. I was meant to be going on the AM show when Duncan Garner was doing it. Amanda Gillies read my book, wrote me a beautiful message, was very happy to interview me, but it kept getting canned. And in the end, the words came back that the producers say that the audience don't actually want to see this. So,
oh, that is so gutless. That is so gutless.
It's true, though, isn't it? No one wants to deal with it. So people like me, to be honest, I'd be surprised if you found another survivor with my 16 years of trafficking and abuse as healed as I am. I don't think there's another story like this in our country. And, you know, unfortunately, I'm not being utilised in the way I could be. So I'll keep
I think that's a really important note for us to close on.
Yes.
I can tell you that we are putting out policy statements in different areas. And when I looked at child sexual abuse, I thought, who am I to capture the nuance and the subtlety and the importance and the depth and the breadth of this horrendous issue? And that was when your image came back to me from that interview I'd heard earlier. And I thought, I think the policy statement will stand as an interview with you, Gloria. I very much hope that we do make it into a new kind of governance for New Zealand. And I promise you, I will be picking up that phone and you and I will be working together on making these wonderful changes that you offer to all New Zealand. I just can't give you enough credit, enough praise. And yet I know that's not why you do it at all. You do it to help.
Yeah. Thank you. Can I just say a couple of things before I know we need to end? For people that wish to have a look at the books I've written, and the reason I plug that is because I don't get any funding at all. As I said earlier, all of this work is done because I'm a survivor and I have to help. I just have to. So if you go to gloriamasters.com, you'll see all the books there. The third one, for parents, teachers, and others, is a roadmap to help indicate what to look for in your children and also how to protect them in their own home. Because parents, this stuff is real and it's affecting our children and teenagers today. So I'm excited about that book, Liz. I think you'll love that. And then the other thing is with handingtheshameback.org, it's me. I've got a board behind me and I've got a couple of volunteers. Again, we're not funded. If anyone is a survivor and would like any resource, please do go to handingtheshameback.org. We're also social media across all channels, always there to help support. For those that aren't survivors but know survivors or just want to help, please feel free to make a donation. So everything is gratefully accepted. I'll do my best, New Zealand. That's all I can do.
And Gloria, we have often asked over the last few years for Jab Injured, if you would put up your bank account, we will ask people to put donations straight in there. Would you be willing for us to do that in a piece at the end of this interview? We'll just put your bank account details, and if people want to put money straight in after this interview, they can do it.
Thank you very much.
I have two closing questions that are a little personal. Is your father still alive? Did he ever apologize and own the evils and the wrongdoing he did?
My father never once spoke to me about anything other than how to be more sexually alluring and or attractive. We never had a conversation about anything else in my life, ever.
Goodness. And your grandmother, did you ever hear her say, I am sorry I carried this on?
Never.
Those souls must be in a very dark place right now. And finally, Gloria, were you able to build your own family and have a marriage and have children?
Yes. So I got married twice and divorced twice. But I've got two beautiful children. So.
Amazing. And that has not gone through to that generation. The chain of abuse has been broken.
No, look, I'm a bit over the top. I'm one of those mothers. No, come near my kids or you'll be in trouble. No,
tiger mother is a good mother.
Yeah, well, I'm very grateful. I just know at the age of 11, believe it or not, I just remember saying I will never parent my children like this. So
I mean, all Kiwis watching this will know what I say. You're an extraordinary soul, and it's been a great honor to talk to you. Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you.